Hi, we're just waiting a few more minutes for people to log in. Hi, welcome everyone. We are very excited to have our very first election forum. It's designed for the AAJA Asia chapter, and welcome to some of our members who are watching from the US. My name is Zella Chin. I'm the Executive Vice President for the third largest chapter, and it spans Japan, Korea, China, Singapore, India, Malaysia, and Hong Kong. So we are having elections for national board members. The positions are President, Vice President of Civic Engagement, and Vice President of Finance. And the deadline to vote is August 12th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And before we get to the contested positions, we will start with the chat with Michelle Lee, who is running for another 2-year term as president for 2021 and 2022. Hi, Michelle, how are you?
I'm well. Thanks for having us.
You just filed a story. I'm sorry.
It's been a hectic week.
You must be exhausted, but thank you for joining us. It's quite late for you, I know. Why don't we start with a little bit about you, your career, and what AAJA means to you, because many of our members don't know you yet.
Yeah, of course. Well, thank you so much for hosting this. I'm really excited to get a chance to speak and hear from the AAJA chapter members. It is still very much on my list of things to eventually make it physically to N3Con. I'm so excited that it's digital. I got a ticket to digital N3Con, so it'll be my first time, and I'm sorry to not be there with you. But I have had the chance to meet with a couple of the sub-chapter members during my visits to Asia. I always try to make it a point to, wherever I go, try to meet my AAJA family there. And you know, the Asia chapter is just so vibrant and always super active and constantly growing. And I think it's, you know, so great that we have such a great Asia chapter. I'm Michelle Lee. I'm a reporter at the Washington Post. I'm on the national political team. I'm an investigative and enterprise reporter on the political team. I joined AAJA when I was 18 years old, when I was in college. I was born in Seoul, Korea, raised in Guam, and I got to college in Atlanta, Georgia when I was 18. And I was looking for a group of journalists that I could lean on so that I could become a professional journalist too. And I pretty much Googled Asian Americans and journalists, and turns out we had really good SEO at the time, and came across AAJA, and the rest is really history. I joined the board as national secretary in 2014 Since then, I served as secretary and then the senior vice president, and then I became president in 2019. I am running for a second term, and this is going to be my last term, and I will end my career on the national board at the end of this term. I will have served on national board for almost 11 years at that point, I think, or 10 years, because I kind of transitioned in 2013. And I am so excited to see all the different candidates who are sharing their vision for AAJA, who are here with us as well. Over the past 2 years, AAJA has gone through a lot of changes. Our executive director left in 2018. After that, I took charge of the search for the next executive director. And then a lot of the 2019 year I've spent just transitioning the new executive director while keeping the organization going and steady and growing. We're very financially stable, and it's the help of the entire governing board as well as super volunteers around us who help us doing that. And I'm running for another I'm running for another 2-year term so that I could continue to build on the stability that we've been able to bring to AAJA, along with Naomi, who is our new executive director, and to set AAJA on a path to greater growth and stability over the next several years. So my goal over the next 2 years is to build on the successes that we've been able to have over certainly the past year and a half under our new executive director, and make sure that we're able to level up on everything that we do with her leadership.
Okay. I also joined AAJA when I was a college student. And I also went to a university in the South. I went to Duke University. So what were you most proud of in the last 2 years that you were president?
In the last 2 years, like I said, having a new executive director while continuing to make sure that the organization stays on a path of stability and growth, it's almost like building a plane while you're landing it and then trying to prepare for the next takeoff. It's a huge undertaking, and it's with the support of the entire board as well as the advisory board that we were able to do this, and all the chapter leaders and affinity group leaders who helped us keep going even when we had a completely new executive director. A lot of my work in 2019 was focused on making sure that AAJA is financially sound, that we have a successful convention, and that our programs are running smoothly, and that the programs are expanding. At the end of the day, being president, to me, is making sure that our organization, to its core, is doing its work, that we're meeting our mission, and that we're doing our best to represent all of our members' various needs. We don't always do it perfectly, but we strive to do it as well as we can. And I'm really glad that we were able to have a solid year in 2019. So far in 2020, I would say this has been an extremely challenging year to be a nonprofit leader while being a working journalist. It's been a chaotic year in many ways. We have a global pandemic that really started with us having to talk about, why you can't call it the China virus, why you can't call it the Wuhan virus, and use all these misleading and offensive images, and the coverage of the pandemic as it began. In February, AAJA was out in front of the coverage, and we actually spoke out very early about why the newsrooms need to be held to higher standards. Since then, our members have been going through a lot of challenges. So many people were getting laid off. They're still getting laid off, losing jobs, having layoffs. It's been an extremely chaotic year and a painful year for our members. On top of that, we knew that we would not be able to have an in-person convention, so we had to negotiate ourselves out of a potentially $500,000 penalty that we faced up until we were able to negotiate ourselves out of the existing hotel contract. And we were able to push that into the next year and launch a first ever virtual convention. It's been a lot to juggle, and it's been a really hard year to make sure that we can keep our family together when we're all so spread apart. And part of that has been just making sure that we're out there publicly supporting our family, putting ourselves, as visible as we can, even though we're all spread apart, and making sure that we're presenting some sort of a unifying front and an experience around the AAJA virtual convention. Something we heard very early on, right around March when this was all beginning, our members were being laid off in droves. They were losing jobs left and right. I was hearing every day from people who were losing freelance opportunities as well as full-time opportunities. It was really painful. And one of the things that I heard at that time was people saying, we need some sort of a rallying convention this summer. We don't know if it's going to happen in person, but our students are learning, or losing out on summer internships. Our college students are graduating into a market where you can't go into work in person. And AAJA needs to be there to support our broader membership. And I'm really proud that we were able to step up during a pandemic that none of us has ever faced before. I thank the entire board and the entire leadership of this organization, every single chapter leader, every single affinity group leader. We could not be in this stable position today. As of today, AAJA Fest, our sponsorships have actually exceeded what we thought would come in for the year. And we do not face a penalty for the convention. And our organization is on a very stable financial footing. And I know that many organizations can't say that about themselves this year. And I'm very proud of that.
Okay. Definitely 2020 has been a year like not any other with this pandemic. So what is your vision for the next 2 years?
My vision for the next 2 years is to really level up in the things that we do well. We run very, the basic functions of what we do are really good. Our journalism programs have been stable for decades. We have a very vibrant media watch effort that has been there and been out there for, again, decades. And what we need to do next in the next several years is to really ramp up from there, not just do AAJ 1.0. We need to get to 2.0, 3.0. And I want to set ourselves on that path. I had the pleasure and a very humbling experience in December to meet the founders of AAJA. Initially, we wanted to have our national convention for our 40th anniversary, which is next year in LA, which is where we were founded. And we started reconnecting with the founders of AAJA thanks to the help of the LA chapter and the people who are very veteran members who helped us get in contact with them. And I met Bill Singh, who founded AAJA, and I was so struck by how much what they wanted at the time still aligns with what we want now. At the time when they founded AAJA in 1981, they wanted to be seen in newsrooms. They wanted to see other people like them in newsrooms, and they wanted to help their community. And at the end of the day, that's all we want, but we need to push for more. We do media watch, media, the media access, that part of our civic engagement very well. But what is the next step? How can AAPIs really be front and center in every part of our government, our society, our culture, mass media, everywhere? What is the next step in our civic engagement? AAJ does very well in its journalism programs. ELP, Voices, JCamp, very strong for decades. But what is the next step? How do we get the ELP graduates to become the next CEOs of every single media company in the country and around the world? We were really lucky to have the opportunity to bring ELP to Asia. And I want to build on that. What is the next step for ELP? What is the next step for JCamp and Voices? The things we do very well to our core, but how can we push ourselves to do even more to achieve greater impact around the globe? That is a vision that I want to set AAJ on the path to. And by the time I leave this office, I want to make sure that we are on our way there. And I just want to be able to have 2 more years to lay some more of the groundwork to help us achieve those great global successes.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. That was a lot of information you just gave us. So for the audience who is watching back home, and some of you are from the States, and I see Ken in Beijing. Hi, everybody, welcome. Feel free to drop us a question in the chat box, and I'll ask Michelle, and she also comes back at the end of our session today, so you can always ask her questions then. So, Michelle, yes, globally, we would like AAJA to be setting the tone, setting the bar very high. But the Asia chapter is AAJA's third largest chapter, and yet our members in Asia don't feel very connected to national. They don't have a strong relationship with national. I mean, just for example, our election forum, the one we're having specifically for the Asia chapter versus a separate one for the rest of the US, which is actually organized Monday at 3 o'clock Hong Kong time, which is a bit of a disconnect there. We don't feel like we're part of the national chapter. How do you plan to change that?
Yeah, that's a great point. And we have a lot of opportunity to grow there and do better. Expanding into Asia was a part of our vision for the next 3 to 5 years. But that was 2 years ago when we set that vision. And we have since then gone through a lot of instability at the national organization that's had us, that's kind of forced us to triage a lot of things. And I think that what we need to do is really take a look again at what we were hoping how we were hoping our organization was going to grow in the next 3 to 5 years. And an integral part of that is Asia expansion and global expansion. Our vision when we set that was that we would have an AAJA chapter on every single continent. I think it's possible. I don't know who's out there in Antarctica, but we could really expand our presence. I'm excited about the opportunity to have our joint convention in 2022 in Asia and national. I think our plans to work on that will help us bring us closer. The pandemic has actually kind of helped us a lot move closer to achieving that. Now we know how to do a virtual convention, and virtual will be such a big part of doing 22 and making sure that goes according to plan. So as we're planning AAJA FETs, we're already talking about, okay, well, we're glad that we're learning this 2 years in advance so that we have plenty of time to build up to an Asia national joint convention in 2022, as we had discussed. And like I said, in terms of our programs, I would love to see how our programs can expand into Asia. You have a lot of student members that we could continue to connect. And as our organization and our coverage becomes more and more global, I would love to see ways that we could coordinate together on finding the right sponsors who can help both Asia as well as the organization at the national level, so we can bring more cohesion between the way we find the people outside of our current sponsors who could actually help us fulfill that expansion into global, into Asia. So I know this is going to be a years-long effort, and so far we've not fully lived up to the effort that we want to eventually achieve. But I am confident that the way that we are going now, the more coordination that we are starting to develop with Asia, will set us on the right path to one day having a much more cohesive Asia and national relationship.
So for those of us who are not familiar, we've had a discussion of having a joint Asia and national convention together in 2022 and in both locations, and some of it would be a mix of virtual and in person. So it sounds like that's still on the cards, and that's very, very exciting. Okay, changing tactic here, a different question. So in doing research for this election forum, I've discovered there's a bit of tension here, and that I've been told that, Michelle, you like to handpick your candidates for national board officer. I was wondering if you could address this and if you might have issues working with the diversity of opinions.
Sure, thanks for asking that. I am very grateful every election to have at least one person run for each position. At the end of the day, we're a volunteer-run organization, volunteer-led organization, and national officer elections, we've had too many uncontested elections until now. I am so grateful to see such vibrant and healthy debate around where our organization should go. And I think this entire experience of having two very contested elections and with really great ideas from each candidate is very healthy for our organization. In terms of handpicking, I know that some people have said that. I have no say in who becomes, the VP, the next VP of either positions. I'm not endorsing anyone for the roles. I have already told each of the candidates that I would be grateful to have them on board, whether or not they become the VP of either position. What I love is that this election, we have brought out so many different ideas to talk about how our organization should go. And I want these tensions to exist as AAJA moves forward. I think it's good to have candidates who want to push back on the way that AAJA is currently run, because that is a check and balance that we need at national. I need people to challenge our thoughts, challenge us to think differently and do things differently. And I think that's really good for our organization. And at the end of the day, I know that whoever is elected, we will be able to work together. We will have a collaborative experience. And I'm really confident that we could all work together as a team. And like I said, I ask every single person who's running for the VP office now to please stay involved, whether or not you win, because your ideas and the way that I've seen the way you've rallied the members in our organization, it's so much energy in ways that I have not seen in a long time. And it really heartens me. And I really, really do hope that everyone who's running for election keeps up that level of energy and keeps up that level of pushing back and giving feedback, because I think that's extremely healthy for our organization.
Great, thank you, Michelle. I'll let you go and grab some dinner, but for those back home, she's going to come back near the end of our discussion with the other VP candidates. So if you have any questions for her, that's a great time to ask them, so you can hold them until then.
Oh, sorry, one more thing.
Yes.
Our initial vision for AAJA Fest was to do something that would be completely globally appreciated, where we can hand off at the end of the day Eastern time, and it would continue to go on West Coast, Pacific, Asia, and make sure that everyone has something to do during that entire week, no matter what time zone they're in. It turns out it was a lot ambitious to try to pull that off in 2 months, but now we really know what it takes to build something like that. Like I said, that was a huge learning experience for us thinking toward 2022. And I recognize that this year we were not able to fully pull off what we wanted to in terms of having overnight programming for AAJA Fest, which is why we have extended the hardship rate to all the AAJA members so that you could attend, while recognizing that you're not going to be able to attend a lot of the live sessions. But we have so much to offer for you that will all be pre-recorded. And I want to say that, I recognize that we were not able to fully do what we had set out to do. And it was a big learning experience. And I hope that you guys can all still join us for AAJA Fest, even if you're catching up with us later. And I hope that we can still have some sort of a community around it globally. And we will work harder to make sure that as we plan for 2022, these are things that are very much in place, that we put into place very early, and rather than trying to fit it in 2 months. So I do hope that you can join us. And I'm just going to put my video on mute, but I'll still be listening.
Great, thank you, Michelle. We'll see you a bit later. Okay. So as Michelle was saying, AAJA Fest is August 9th through the 15th, and that will be all virtual this year. So you can connect basically at any time of the day or at night. And they do offer a special rate for Asia members, which is $90 for an entire week of programming, and opportunities to have one-on-ones with the recruiters and networking sessions. And Asia chapter is having its own conference, August 28th through 30th, and it's super cheap at $10. And that was because we wanted everybody the opportunity to log in and join us. So please check those out. And we hope to see you at one or both of these conferences. And this session will be recorded. So if you guys need to pop out and can't catch all of it, you can check out the recording. So we are moving on to our Vice President of Civic Engagement. So we have two candidates for this, Julia Chan and Jonathan Choe. Hi, guys. Can you unmute yourselves when you're ready to speak? Yeah, you'll have to do it yourself. So the Vice President of Civic Engagement, this role is dedicated to fulfilling two tenets of the AAJA's mission statement, which is to provide the Asian American Pacific Islander community an awareness of the news media and an understanding of how to gain fair access, and to research and point out when news media organizations stray from accuracy and fairness in the coverage of Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders and our issues. So I've decided that we're going to start with reverse alphabetical order because my name is Zella and I'm used to being at the end of the alphabet and had a traumatic time as a kid. So we will start with Julia, and she will give us a little bit background information about herself, her career, and why we should vote for her for civic engagement.
All right, throwing curveballs at me. Good morning, Asia. Really, really glad to see so many folks here. There's like 21 people in this group. This was put together in the last couple of days, and I think this really shows your commitment to being informed with your vote and with just, getting to know us, which I thank you a lot for. So a little bit about me. My name is Julia B. Chan. I am the managing editor of KQED, and I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go, because I'm going to go a little chronologically here. So my career started at the San Francisco Examiner, which is a long-running newspaper in San Francisco. Any folks here been to the Bay Area? I feel like there's a lot of Asia Bay Area crossover. I'm going to pretend you all rose your hand. So Bay Area chapter, very vibrant, very active, and started out my career, born and raised there, and worked at the San Francisco Examiner for about 7 years. Now, the key takeaway, because I don't unfortunately have enough time to tell you about every single minute of that 7 years, is that I found that I am someone who has special superpower in being a bridge. And what I mean by that is I was able to serve as a bridge from a legacy newsroom organization based in print into digital. I was able to serve as a bridge between intergenerational staff members, and I was able to serve as a bridge between different strategies on the business and editorial side. And so that was something I really took with me into my position at the Center for Investigative Reporting, where I spent 5 years at this nonprofit investigative shop. I don't know how many folks are familiar with it. If you've heard of our more popular brother, sister, sibling, ProPublica, we are very similar organizations. We're and I still say we, even though I haven't been there, in that it was a nonprofit investigative unit that really worked across platforms to get really important stories out into the world, whether it was via broadcast, via radio, digital. It was really someone who at the time, or a newsroom at the time, that just wanted to get certain stories and voices elevated. Now, during my time there, I was most proud of developing a radio show and podcast called Reveal. If folks here are familiar with 60 Minutes, I very much call it the 60 Minutes of radio, in that it is an hour-long investigative show. And to be able to kind of think and pivot your mind in a way to try to storytell data and very harder kind of hard news elements in audio form was a kind of a fascinating journey that I was able to do there. Another challenge with working at an investigative unit is the drumbeat is very different from a daily newsroom. I don't know what the breakdown of folks here daily versus otherwise, but you don't have that daily churn. And so what you have to do is then create your own. And what I really hit upon there during my time at CIR was the audience. Now, as we all know, the media landscape is extremely saturated. People have choices. So how do news outlets stand out? They very much have to earn your trust and earn your loyalty. And so I very much forged this entire strategy and way of thinking at CIR around what audience-focused journalism looks like. It's not top-down decisions. It's not, we know what's good for you, what information you need. It's inviting the audience to have a seat at the table, creating spaces for conversations and feedback, and just being ultimately very productive and constructive about the conversations that we're having. And no longer just saying, hey, we're going to talk at you, but hey, let's have a two-way conversation. And that is something I'm going to pivot a little bit into my vision for the VP of Civic role. Zella brought up the two pillars that we're all aware of. And for me, the third pillar of civic engagement is membership engagement. I think something that I've known for a while, but definitely has been made evident through this campaign and through my listening tour, is that folks do not necessarily feel seen and heard. And during my time on the board, I can say some decisions have been very top down. And, you know, I always find myself asking, is this something membership wants? Do we have data that tells us A? How are we informed to make this decision? And so my ultimate vision is to build a culture of deeper listening. A lot of the work that I've been doing in my past 3 newsrooms, to bring that to AAJA and make it a membership focused. More of a membership focused organization. You can probably hear my dog freaking out right now, so I'm a little trying not to pay attention to him. So back to my time at CIR. From there, after 5 years, I moved on to Mother Jones, where I became the director of audience, which I think is a very great trajectory to show how much my work in the audience space was starting to resonate with both the industry and the audiences. And so my job at Mojo was really cool in that I sat in this intersection of editorial, engagement, and business. And so therefore, was able to really think hard around how, you know, the audience, sure, they read and consume our stuff, but they're also essentially our customers. And so ultimately, how are we serving them well? And we're not serving them well if we're not listening to them. So 2 years at Mother Jones led me to my position now. I'm the managing editor at KQED. It is the largest public media newsroom in California. It is one of the country's most listened to public radio stations and most watched television stations. And I feel like my whole career has really led to this role. It's the first of its kind, managing editor of digital. And again, I'm serving as this bridge position between departments, between formats, between platforms, between different eras of staff. So that is a little bit about my career, but what you're probably more interested in is what I've done at AAJA. And I would probably most like to bring up my experience as the chapter president. I served the SF Bay Area chapter for 3 years as president. And when I had entered into this position, it was in a place of declining membership, and folks were generally disengaged. And so my goal for that very first year was to reactivate the chapter, re-engage folks, just even wave our hands, let them know, hey, we're here, we're doing events, we're listening. What can we do to serve you? And I'm proud to say that I was able to restore our chapter back to large chapter status. It had gotten so bad that we had fallen, the San Francisco Bay Area had fallen to medium chapter status. And that's just not right. And so that is work that I'm super proud of. It speaks to my passion for membership engagement. One thing that I'm also proud of is that I developed our annual fundraiser called Hella Asian, which is a live storytelling event that features AAPI performers, journalists, storytellers, media makers. And we've raised over $20,000 to date. It is a format that is so engaging that we reached beyond the boundaries of AAJA. We sold out not because all of membership came, but because AAPIs in the Bay Area wanted to hear their stories and wanted to hear them live and wanted to engage with their community. And when I talk about it, I'm still so very inspired by it, and I'm very saddened by the fact that we're not going to be able to do it in person this year. But you know, that show is going to go on. It's something the chapter is going to take with it as we go on. And I think I see some folks here who've been there that can probably speak to the energy that you get from being in that room. Yuri volunteered for us. And maybe that's it. Just me and Yuri have experienced the wonder that is Hella Asian. But it was something that I'm very proud of and that I will continue to take with me as I continue my AAJA career. So that speaks to both my chapter my chapter experience, and ultimately at the same time I served on the national board and was able to take us through moments in which we tackled the Olympics. And actually, John Choe, that was the first time we worked together, was on the pronunciation of Pyeongchang. And so I'm just really proud of the things that we were able to do together, and want to continue to do that work as VP of Civic Engagement.
Great, thank you, Julia. To Jonathan, if you could tell us a little bit about your career, your background, and why we should vote for you as VP of Civic Engagement.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hey, everybody. My name's Jonathan Choe. I'm a reporter in Seattle, Washington. So greetings from the US. I am Korean American, so I'll start off by saying 안녕하세요. For the Japanese, konnichiwa. For the Chinese, ni hao. Is that right? And the Indians, it's alo or namaste. So I just wanted to reach out and be semi-culturally relevant there. But anyway, I'm a reporter right now for Como TV, the #1 rated station in the Seattle market, and also an ABC affiliate. And I just arrived here 2.5 months ago, and I arrived during COVID-19. So I'm so thankful I am here safe and sound. But I've had a hell of a career. And along the way, I've always been the scrapper, the underdog. I've always been the guy who's been underestimated, and I've had to fight for everything. I started my career in tiny Champaign, Illinois. And from there, I caught a lot of breaks. I ended up working in Chicago, in Minneapolis, my hometown of Boston, and now back here in Seattle. But I think what's really unique about my career and vantage point is that I left the business 3 times. And one of the most valuable was when I actually worked for one of the most influential nonprofits in America called the MacArthur Foundation. And to this day, Kathy Im, she's one of the head grant makers, remains a big time mentor and supporter, and has helped me navigate this entire process. And the MacArthur Foundation funds Frontline, ProPublica, a lot of the big guns in the business. So I had a really unique vantage point behind the scenes. Then the second time I left, it was when I was in Chicago, and I left the business to start up an inner city backpack journalism, multi-platform digital startup called Change Media Group. When I was reporting in Chicago, I got sick and tired of the mainstream press just going into the south side of Chicago when a black kid or Hispanic kid got shot. And we kept perpetuating the stereotype that black people, Hispanics, black and brown are bad. And I had enough of it. So I decided to empower the kids in my neighborhood with the latest DSLR cameras, Final Cut Pro. And to this day, that's one of the most rewarding aspects of my life, not just my career, because what that turned into was my passion for mentoring. And every step of the way for the past, I say nearly 20 years being a part of AAJA, I've been asked numerous times to run for national positions. But I've always respectfully declined because I decided early on I would spend time with young people, up and coming journalists, one person at a time. And it was for mentoring. And I'm not tooting my own horn, but I thank AAJA for recognizing this. Several years ago, I won AAJA Mentor of the Year. And it was one of the most humbling, at the same time, gratifying experiences of my life. And one of my pillars is to bring that back to this organization, to put it front and center. You guys in Asia have a wealth of experience. We have so much to learn from you. And that's the posture I want to bring and take to this Vice President of Civic Engagement role, because I believe it isn't just about the title or the credentials, because every candidate here is absolutely loaded and could do this job based on just the credentials alone. But what I bring, I think that's very unique, is the ability to, again, bring cultures together, as I did in the US. And at the same time, what I'm also trying to do is revitalize the local chapters. I want to apologize right now. I know that Asia kind of has been forgotten along the way, but I feel like we have an opportunity here to re-engage the Asia chapter, at the same time re-engage many local chapters in America. I won't name them right now, and if you want to talk to me offline, I'd be happy to tell you exactly what I heard. But like Julia, I've been going on a listening tour as well, because for this role, it's so important to understand what you're getting yourself into. And I realized right out of the gate, the first thing I'm going to do is dedicate my time and energy to reinvigorating local chapters. And the plan is actually simple. It's to identify the leaders and empower them, give them the resources, the training. And also there's another word that I'd like to use that I think we need in this role, and that's accountability. There are some leaders right now in AAJA who just have the title and aren't doing anything to lead. Do we want that for our chapters? I don't think so. It gives a bad name to AAJA, and at the same time, our members in those local chapters are not getting the support and resources they need. So what I want to do is I want to personally go to every single chapter, get to know the leaders at the very least, including AAJA, and find out what do you need on the ground up. Because I had the privilege before coming to Seattle of being part of one of the most dynamic chapters, and that's AAJA New England. And while we had maybe only 50 members who were active, it's not about the number of people, it's the quality of people that I was around. And I want to identify, mobilize, and again, inspire those people by simply saying, look, national isn't the piece of this organization that tells you what to do. We should be telling national what they should be doing for us. And I saw that. And I'll give you another example where we actually turned to national this past year. In terms of community outreach, my passion is also to reach nonprofits in every single market, especially the ones that serve our communities of color and Asian American communities. What we did was we put together a workshop in conjunction with National in Boston, and we actually brought a panel of experts from radio, television, digital, multi-platform, print, you name it. We had them on the panel, and we brought more than 70 nonprofits, and we helped the nonprofits better understand how to tell their story through the expertise of the journalists. But we also realized, oh my gosh, we have so much more to learn from our communities. Let's use these experts and uplift more minority voices when we go and get analysts for our stories, our television interviews. And it turned into an amazing situation. And I want to replicate some of these things I personally did in Boston and bring it to the national level by sharing it with the other chapters. And finally, I want to say right now, there is no one size fits all. There is no magic bullet or formula in revitalizing the chapters. I think the beauty of AAJA local chapters and AAJA is you guys have something so unique and wonderful to share. But I don't know about it necessarily when I was in Boston and now even in Seattle. Let's open up lines of communication, have better communication, bare minimum quarterly. Let's know what each chapter is doing. Let's have conference calls with chapter leaders to encourage and inspire each other. And as we're living through this COVID age, I don't think we have excuses anymore because we can access this through Zoom. So I look at this as a tremendous opportunity that we can leverage. And again, as Julie has said, as Michelle has already said, what a time. This is one of the roughest times in our journalism industry, but those also present some of the greatest opportunities. And I want to be your VP of Civic Engagement to help lead that cause.
All right, thank you, Jonathan. For viewers at home, feel free to drop in questions in the chat box, and I'll ask our two very passionate candidates here. Let me start off with my own questions that I got with the other members. So actually the job description for civic engagement provide the AAPI community and awareness of news media, understanding how to gain fair access, covering accuracy and fairness in the coverage of, research and point out when news media organizations stray from the accuracy and fairness on the coverage of Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders and our issues. That is actually very, very US focused. How can we pivot this job role or this mission statement to something that also encompasses what the AAJA chapter is going through and is facing? Either of you? Should I start calling names? Julia, Jonathan, who wants to go first?
Oh, I thought we were going in order. I'm sorry. I thought I'd be happy to go, but I wanted to defer to Julia because I just went on a rant there.
You can go ahead, Jonathan.
Okay, thank you. So let me just say right now, again, the VP of Civic Engagement is responsible for working intimately with Media Watch. And I don't know if it was very clear in kind of my candidate statement, but I've served on Media Watch for 2 years. I saw what it took to mobilize, to get people out there. And one thing I want to do in this role is I want to be an organization that not just responds to issues, concerns, the lack of fair and accurate coverage. I want Media Watch to become more focused on getting ahead of the problem before they become issues. And I'll bring this up because I really appreciate Julia bringing it up earlier. Julia, I'm so sorry. I totally forgot because we were communicating from a distance. We worked on probably one of the more important and personal issues that Media Watch tackled. As Julia began saying, as you know, NBC had the rights to the Winter Olympics in Pyeongchang. And I'm Korean American, and at the time I was working for an NBC-owned and operated station in Boston. And I will argue right now, we were one of the first chapters, me and AAJA New England President Youngjin Kim, who worked in my newsroom, we were like, this is a problem because NBC anchors decided to intentionally pronounce it Pyeongchang, not Pyeongchang as the Koreans like it pronounced. So we said to ourselves, are we going through a time warp right now? Is this like for real that we're like in 2018, I believe, and we're like, they're like wrestling with this? This is a perfect example of AAJA, along with Julia's help, getting ahead and warning NBC. We put out a pronouncer guide on video. We had Stefan Kim, one of our most active Media Watch members, putting out a pronouncer on video. And yet they still chose to ignore it, and they went with Pyeongchang instead of Pyeongchang. What an insult to Korean Americans, let alone Asian Americans. And our organization, we gave them an opportunity. We gave them an opportunity to get ahead of this before it became a problem. They refused. And guess what? They got put on blast, not only by us, but the Washington Post media critic came out and said it was flat out wrong and insulting. And to this day, that's one of the proudest moments. And I want AAJ's Media Watch to be like that, not just reacting, but getting ahead of the issue. Here in Asia, that was the question you asked me initially. I've been following some of the issues going on here. The 3 Wall Street Journal reporters arrested. We came out with a statement on that. But what we need here in the US, and I think this is where I want to bridge, is we need more communication. I want several Asia members on Media Watch. We need eyes and ears on the ground. Look, we have a time zone difference. We don't know exactly what's going on. This 24/7 news cycle is insane. But I want to work closely, encouraging Media Watch to choose people out of Asia so they can sound the alarm if they see an issue about to brew. I hope that makes sense.
Great, thank you, Jonathan. Julia, your chance to answer the question, how do we change the job description so it encompasses Asia as well?
So I think, that there will need to be a separate strategy for Asia with Media Watch. When I think about Media Watch, I do think about the conversations I've had with folks in the Asia chapter around asking, hey, so I don't really see anything offensive with Bobby's World, or I hear you all being, mad about Pyeongchang and Chang. I'm probably not even saying it the best. And, can you explain to us why this is culturally tense? And so I think that speaks to something we need to directly address, which is a cultural difference. We don't just live in a different place, but we also live in different cultures and societies, and we have different conversations. And so what I would want to know is, what would a Media Watch for Asia look like? What is offensive there? What do we need to put on our radar there? And have that be something that we tackle kind of like a task force, which we have models for and that are really successful for. In fact, one of the things I'm really proud of is working with a young man by the name of Thomas Mangonia in the Bay Area, who was very passionate about how Pacific Islanders do not feel supported or included in AAJA or generally Asian American spaces. And so through the hard work that Tomas and I did in the Bay Area, that 3 years of work led to the launching of the PI task force here. Now, I think along those same lines, I don't know that I'm familiar with what AAJA chapter or AAJA members would want out of a media watch. Like, what would we need to hold a media accountable for in Asia, or vice versa? Are there things happening in the US that AAJA chapter members are incensed by, but we are not really, galvanizing around? I will actually give a perfect example of this, which is going to make me a little bit vulnerable. But my dad actually gave me a call last week, letting me know that he thought my campaign slogan, "Yes, we Chan," was offensive, because Chinese last names are so important to Chinese people. And he was like, if I didn't know you and you were saying, "Yes, we Chen," and I was a Lee, I would be like, "No, I'm a Lee." And so, even just having that conversation within my own family reveals not just a generational gap, but a cultural one. So how do we bridge those gaps within our own organization? Because they do exist. We can't gloss over them. We can't pretend they're not there. We are a family, but a family is dynamic. A family has issues and challenges it needs to directly address in order to solve them, in order to be a happy family. And so that's how I would want to, if elected, I would want to engage AAJA and how I would want to tackle this. I do ultimately think that it would require a different strategy than what we have employed right now.
All right, thank you, Julia. So members, feel free to drop questions into the chat box. We have one from Deepti Divya, and this goes to Jonathan. Can you give us a sense of your history with AAJA?
Yeah. Well, I mentioned this earlier, but I've been with AAJA now for nearly 20 years. Most of them high points, but I've also seen a lot of the challenging times. And in my nearly 20 years of being a part of this incredible organization, I've had the privilege of being mentored. I've had access to tremendous job fairs. I've access to recruiters that I never would have had. More importantly, the friendships, lifelong friendships and support that I would not have gotten anywhere else. That's what I've gained from AAJA. Let me just share briefly before I got to Seattle. I was on the sidelines for 9 months. I left NBC Boston. And maybe this is an issue that AAJA Asia members deal with because you guys are majority Asian. But the fact I'm an Asian male broadcaster, we're seen right now as a dying breed. AAJ commissioned a study more than a decade ago that said something along the lines of there's a ratio between Asian women on television in America to men is like 7-1. And it was really fascinating when I heard this because, they were being open, real, and honest. And it was in conjunction with USC's Annenberg School of Communications. And to this day, I thought we were making progress, but some of the reasons were, number one, the majority of the news directors at the time were white men, and they had something called yellow fever. In other words, they preferred hiring Asian women over Asian men. Number two, Asian men were seen as effeminate and not, sexy enough to lead a newscast. And number three, we were seen also not only as the perpetual foreigner, but we were seen as the enemy, as the Japanese kamikaze or the kung fu ninja master. And I couldn't believe that at the time when the study came out through AAJ, and I appreciate it at the time, I was like, no way I'm going to deal with that. I won't have to face any of that. Fast forward to 9 months ago. With my resume working in some of the most dynamic TV markets in America, I thought I'd be able to get a job right away. But I couldn't, and I still have the text. My agent, and I applied to a Los Angeles station, the mecca of Koreans, right? Korean Americans. One of the news directors said to me in the text, and I'd be happy to show it to anyone who wants to see it with their own eyes. We're just not looking for Asian men right now. Do you have any Hispanic men or females, black men, black females? And I was just stunned. But why am I sharing all this? because AAJA was there for me. I'm here in Seattle because AAJA walked with me in the midst of all of that. I had mentors call me. Some of my friends from ELP, they were trying to hook me up with jobs. My point is, this organization has always walked with me every step of the way, and I've seen the highs and lows, and we're going through another challenging time. And this is why, more than ever, AAJA is needed. One of my other pillars is to come together, and I'm so glad Michelle said we're financially sound. I want to create a transition fund because I just went through a transition, and it would have been nice if I had a little extra change to help out. We have journalists right now who have been laid off, who are about to be laid off, and will be laid off, okay? We need to be there for them practically. And I also want, as I experience, because I know other journalists don't have 20 plus years of experience in AAJA, I want every person right now to have a mentor, a veteran they can walk with who will be there every step of the way. How amazing would that be if we all had mentors? I know, even though I've been in the business for this long, I can always be better. And I am going to likely run into that tough time. And I want AAJA, I want other people to experience through AAJA what I experienced. So I hope that answered your question.
Great, thank you, Jonathan. So why don't we give some time to Julia? I wanted to ask, you brought up a very good issue about diversity and the notion of diversity and what it means in Asia. It's something that we definitely struggle with. But what we have been really good at actually is the Media Watch program and putting out statements. For example, we really did one, we worked very well with National on this about ABS-CBN, the largest station in Philippines, closing. And we put out a statement about that, led by the AAJA chapter, supported by National. And actually, we got a response from the president of the station thanking us for that. So how can AAJA be a better advocate for press freedom, do you think, overall?
I'm sorry, you cut out for a minute. You asked, how can AAJA be an advocate for diversity overall?
Better advocate for press freedom overall.
For press freedom. I mean, I think you just mentioned one thing that we do really well, which is aim to send out timely responses to things that we need to call out. And I think right now, you know, calling things out is very important. And there's actually a lot of traction, as we're seeing with social media and with folks being galvanized by movements and having way more access towards media to then, you know, chime in with their support or show their support in a creative way. I think what needs to happen to evolve the situation is follow-up. I think what happens nowadays, as we all know that with social media, we have these echo chambers. And what happens with movements, what happens when we call something out, when we stand up for something, is that it makes a big splash, or it can. Ideally, it does, right? If we're successful, it makes that big splash. But what happens next? Are we following up? What is our drumbeat? I would like to explore a strategy where we have a longer term lens and plan for following up on a story. What was the impact of putting out that statement? Did we put out a statement on that impact? Do folks know that the station thanked the AAJA chapter and National? That to me is impact. So, you know, there's a bit of this like kind of feedback loop that we need to create for ourselves with our membership, because membership absolutely needs to know what we're doing and the effects that it has and what outcomes it's creating, but also the greater world as well. So if we think about it as, you know, if our audience is membership, how are we communicating with them? And if our audience is the wider AAPI community or the wider public, how are we communicating that with them? And how are we ultimately, and this all points back to, I think, a word of the day, accountability. This is accountability against media organizations. This is accountability against the folks that we are calling out. And ultimately, it can be, hopefully, be an opportunity to educate as well. And actually, one idea I did want to make sure that I gave a little time and space to is Along the same lines, I too, like Jonathan, want to be proactive in how we are trying to get ahead of media organizations not using the right language and not framing our stories well. And one way that we can be doing this is reevaluating and revisiting our style guide. And I think there's also potential here to collaborate on something very productive and very tangible with NABJ, NAHJ, and NLGJA. I can never say that smoothly. NAJA, SAJA, like all of our affinity org fam, they need to be brought into this conversation because this is work we're all doing right now. I have to say at KQED, first with the coronavirus and then with the civil uprisings that are happening now, I have had to create a style guide from scratch that talks specifically about how do we talk about police accountability? How do we talk about murder? How do we talk? What words do we use? And all of that work you see happening in other spaces. You see AP capitalizing Black. You see conversations about also capitalizing white. Like words matter. Words are essentially the heart of everything we're doing right now. And we're in a position to really inform and educate how folks are using words and how folks are framing our stories. So if you take a look, our current style guide does live on the website. I think it's in a dire need of an update and maybe some technological uplift so that we are not updating, a Word doc on a page, but it can maybe live in a more dynamic way that is useful to folks. I think one of the number one requests I got as chapter president was, how do I talk about fill in the blank? How do I pronounce this? How are you all reacting to that? This is also a space that I think we could be more inclusive with communities that we have not had as much inclusivity with, like Pacific Islanders. I know that the Pacific Islander Task Force right now is working on updates to the guide that help us talk about American Samoan issues, that help us talk about, before the next incident in Guam happens and we all get mad about it because people don't know how to talk about it, we actually had a handbook and a guide for folks to refer to before making those mistakes that we ultimately will have to then have folks be accountable for. So I am very much on the proactive train as well. And that is something I think we could very tangibly get to doing immediately.
Great, thank you, Julia. All right, your turn, Jonathan. How can AAJA be a better advocate for press freedom?
I think as I've been listening today to all the candidates speak so far and listening to some of the questions, I think first and foremost, we need to find out what the needs are of the AAJA chapter. And quite frankly, I don't know what all the needs are. And I don't know all the dynamics. So I want to use this season, if I am elected as VP of Civic Engagement, to really just listen and find out what the needs are on the ground. I can come up with, all these talking points and say, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z, but I need to know what I'm getting myself into. So I want to use this, first year to really prioritize the AAJA chapter and find out what are the challenges, what are the struggles. Of course, I know what's happened with Media Watch and where we've had to put out the statements, but I want to get to know each one of the members and the organizations they work for, because they're quite different. And I think that's what's best. I said this earlier, it's not one size fits all. Every chapter is unique, different, and we need to personalize that. Also, again, an organization that I've always wanted to work with is the Committee to Protect Journalists, right? I mean, they're like elite. They are the standard bearer. Let's work with them as well. I know that many members with AAJA are a part of it, and I've personally gotten a lot of resources from CPJ as well. At the same time, I think what's really interesting, as Julia brought up, is the accountability piece. And again, we're on the same page with that when it comes to the follow-up. But what I want to add as well, I think at the end of the day is, I'm not here, and I don't believe Media Watch is to put people on blast, okay? I think the way I define accountability, I want to be very clear, is to give people an opportunity to learn, to correct mistakes, and to collaborate with us. Because at the end of the day, it is about the follow-up, but then the key also is the relationship. Are we just interested in the end result, or do we also care about the relationship that we are trying to build and maintain? And again, in Asia, I don't know exactly how all those complicated nuances and relationships work, but I want to learn. And I assure you, if I do, I will commit to building it, and not just on my own, but through my team. I can't do this alone, guys. We're a volunteer-led organization. I need people to step up from Asia to tell me they're all in. Those are the types of people I want to work with. And if there are some people on the fringes, let me know. Let's inspire them. Let's encourage them. Let's let them know we need them for this cause and movement. Because that's what I believe AAJA is. It's not just an organization or a social club. It is a movement that can start to really transform not only our newsrooms, but the culture and the people we serve.
Okay, thank you, Jonathan. So we have a question from the audience. Daryl Miho writes, Julia, how will you work with the board to help connect with the Asia chapter? 1 minute, please. We have a couple of questions from the audience.
All right. How will I work with the board to connect with Asia members? That is a really interesting question if you parse it out, because it implies collaboration. It maybe speaks to the different roles that currently sit in the board and the different ways in which they probably tackle this, the different needs that each role has. So if I think about the VP of programming, they're probably approaching Asia from a very convention programming, voices, ELP, JCamp place, and having those conversations. I may be engaging Asia, if elected, to talk through, how Media Watch makes more sense with a global perspective versus one that's very focused on the US. So I think that would need to be acknowledged first and foremost. And I think, as with any organization, any office, any family, I think most challenges boil down to communication challenges. So what we would need to do to be better coordinated is really to know what conversations are being had so that we're not, all approaching the same people with different things, but so that we're a little bit more coordinated and strategic. And ultimately, what really good communication means is really hearing each other, really
I believe Julia's just been cut off. I guess your time is up.
Oh, so am I back?
Yeah, but it's already been 1 minute. So we'll give Jonathan a chance to answer that. So specifically, how will the board connect with the Asia chapter?
I want to say first and foremost that I have again worked with Media Watch, so I'm familiar with the personnel of Media Watch, what Media Watch is about, its strengths, its areas that need growth, and also the direction. I want to use this time to also thank Pia Sarkar. She is the outgoing VP of Civic Engagement, who's also currently on Media Watch, and we've worked closely together. And I've had the privilege of learning from her and getting tremendous advice from her. I've also gotten the public endorsement already of two of the key members of Media Watch, and that's Stefan Kim and Bobby Calvan. And because of my relationship with so many of the key players on Media Watch, what we need to do is approach Asia with a posture, again, of learning, of understanding, of trying to figure out what the needs and concerns are. And I want to use this time to apologize. If we haven't done that at Media Watch, we need to do better. So give us that opportunity, give us that chance to get to know you guys more. And as I said, as we get to know you guys more, I want to start intentionally identifying key AAJA Asia journalists to be a part of the team. We're in the US, okay? It's mind-boggling to follow the 24/7 news cycle all the time in the US, let alone Asia. We need to do better, but I assure you, I am committed to learning from you guys and bringing you guys along for the ride too, because it's a two-way street. I look at this as a great opportunity to get stronger as a family, but also as Media Watch. And like Michelle said, Media Watch has been around for quite some time already, and it's been one of the crown jewels of the entire organization. We have momentum right now. Let's build off of that. Let's be more streamlined. Let's have more of a presence in Asia. And once again, I'll turn it to the Asia chapter. What do you guys?
Thank you, Jonathan. Time's up. All right, so we have another question in the chat from Kari, who is our Hong Kong subchapter president. She asks, as U.S.-China tensions becomes heightened, I've been increasingly wary of news media reports solely demonizing Asia and China. Tensions are only expected to rise further amid the elections in the U.S. So what are ways you see the role of VP of Civil Engagement as tackling the language of newsroom reporting to ensure that there isn't a fallback to this language deployed during the Cold War? Who wants to go first? Nobody wants to tackle this one.
I went first the last time there was an open question, so I'm just deferring, but I'd be happy. I'm always willing to talk. You know that. You have to cut me off. But I want to, out of respect for Julia, give her an opportunity to go first on an open question like this.
I appreciate that. So there's been a little bit of some tech chatter. Apparently, anyone can mute anyone unmuted. So that's what happened to me last time. So folks could be aware of what they're pressing on their screen. I just wanted to give that technical support advice out there so that folks can have a fair amount of time. Yeah, I'm happy to tackle this question. I think I do agree. I think there's potential for this to get worse. I addressed this in my candidate statement. I think folks in general, not just in the US, really face this rising tide of anti-AAPI sentiments. And that is honestly one of the biggest reasons I wanted to run for this job. Actually, if I'm honest, when I think about it, 2020 in and of itself, as we said an hour ago, early on in this conversation, has been so much. There's so much that has happened in this year. But I think the role and the profile that AAJA can have in the current conversation and in upcoming conversations is huge. And so I think we already have, like John spoke to, a really strong infrastructure for being a media watch, being a media watchdog for what is happening. What I would like to see is how we are being productive. How are we holding folks accountable in a productive way? And that is through education. That is through the education building that John was talking about. That is through really wanting to evolve the situation, not just giving folks a slap on the wrist and hoping it doesn't happen again. But as we build towards a future in which we can be more proactive, some of this work is going to have to be done in the meantime. And I can only see this role, honestly, becoming a lot more hectic as this year goes by and as we ramp up for the election.
Okay, so I'm ready. Thank you, Julia. Time's up. So Jonathan, your opportunity to answer this question: how can a person who is the VP of Civic Engagement tackle the issue of the language in newsroom reporting on U.S.-China tensions?
And let me follow up with a question. Is the person who asked this, is this person talking about Asia newsrooms or U.S. newsrooms? Because there is a distinction there.
It's more of a U.S. newsrooms issue.
Okay. So from a U.S. newsroom perspective, without mentioning certain newsrooms that are notorious for violating this on a consistent, ongoing basis, yes, it's a very real problem, and more so than ever. If you've been following the 24/7 news cycle, everything's become more politicized than ever. I think first and foremost, my policy and approach and strategy with everything is one person at a time, one news organization at a time. Look, we're all part of AAJA. We're all journalists, okay? That basically means we all, for the most part, the majority of us work in a newsroom. I think we have to all create a new culture where everyone assumes they're a watchdog, that they're part of Media Watch by extension. And I think that's so vital. That's one of the calls I'm going to make early on as Vice President of Civic Engagement. I want every single AAJA member to ask themselves, what type of newsroom do I work in? And what can I do to be a solution? It's easy to complain about the problem. It's easy to punt and kick the ball to media watch. And if there's an issue you need help with, you should. But at the same time, I think we have a lot of savvy, sophisticated journalists, eyes and ears on the ground in Wyoming versus Florida versus Texas versus New York versus LA versus North Carolina versus Portland and Seattle, where it's completely different. And this VP of civic engagement can't be every place at once. That's why I believe my job is to mobilize and deploy and identify people who are willing to volunteer and be the eyes and ears. And I'm going to make that call right out of the gate and remind everyone, we're all watchdogs. It's not just a title of a specific group. And I think that way we can combat this. As Julia talked about being Asian Americans, we've all now covered in the US stories about COVID-19 harassment. In Seattle alone, I'm the crime and justice reporter. Do you know how many stories I've done about Asian Americans being spit on, punched, harassed, restaurants being vandalized? And then, you have news organizations say, as they report, instead of it's due to COVID-19, they'll say it's due to the China virus or the Wuhan virus. Oh my gosh, in Seattle, we have to correct this as well. But quite frankly, I think sometimes it's innocent. It's an innocent mistake. Fine,
Jonathan, time's up. Time's up. Time's up. No more, Jonathan. All right. Thank you guys, Julia, Jonathan. You guys had very good viewpoints, and thank you for sharing them all with our members, our AAJA members, and our viewers who are dialing in from the US and all over the globe, actually. So Julia and Jonathan will go and step down as we head over to the top for the VP of Finance, but they will come back at the end for some final Q&A with everybody. Okay, thank you guys, bye. We'll see you later. All right, so for those people who have just been joining us, this session is being recorded, so you can log in and watch the first half of the session, or if you need to step away later on, you can still come back and look for it. And just to let you know, we have some very important conferences coming up. AAJA National Convention is going all virtual this year, and that will be August 9th through the 15th. It is $90 US for Asia members. So that's a full week of programming with one-on-one sessions with recruiters and socials and happy hours as well. And if you can't make it to that, or if you want to do even more AAJA stuff, we have N3Con, our Asia conference coming up. It is also all virtual, and that will be the weekend of August 28th through 30th. So you guys can just log in from anywhere, and that's just $10 US. So super cheap. All right, so we are going to move on to a discussion with the candidates for Vice President of Finance, and the candidates are Ravi Kapur and Jin Ding. So this position shall keep and maintain, in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles, adequate and correct accounts of the properties and business transactions of the corporation, including accounts of its assets, liabilities, receipts, disbursements, gains, losses, capital, and earnings. Okay, so we are going in reverse alphabetical order because my name is Zella and I don't like being at the end. So reverse alphabetical order, Ravi gets to go first. And can you please tell us a little bit about yourself, your career, and why we should vote for you as VP of Finance?
All right. Well, first of all, thank you all so much for inviting us for this forum. I'm elated to engage with the AAJA chapter. To be frank, I mean, let's face it, when you live in the United States and you're worried about your career, you're often, especially if you're part of AAJA, as long as I've been since 2001, you're focused on your local chapter, you're focused on your career, and you don't think about some of the external chapters that are happening domestically. And certainly AAJA has been a revelation to hear about some of the engagement. I have had contact with a number of your members over the years, including Juan, who I worked with in the San Francisco chapter for a number of years. So Juan, nice to see you. And thank you for the whole chapter for setting this up. So for those of you guys that don't know me, my name is Ravi Kapur. I am a journalist, which is, I think, the thing that I do, but I actually run television stations, and it's been a mechanism for me to stay relevant in journalism. And I'll give you a little bit of a backstory. And part of the reason why I'm so, I'm just so thankful to be part of this organization after all these years, because when I got started in 2001, we had an economic downturn and it was very challenging to find a job. And I got to AAJA on a whim in 2001. I was a year out of college and job prospects were terrible. And I was fortunate enough to find out about AAJA about a week before it took place in my hometown in San Francisco. And I didn't know what to expect, but almost immediately, I'd say within the first half an hour of showing up at the Hyatt Regency, I ran into Leanne Kim, who had just recently founded the San Diego chapter. And Leanne Kim just embraced me from the get-go and almost kind of pseudo-embraced me for her chapter, even though I was a Bay Area native. And from that point forward, I've felt as part of the AAJA family. And so, as I look at my career, 20 years into it, starting off as basically a glorified intern, having done like a dozen internships at different TV stations. And the reality is you may feel this way in Asia when you're Asian American, especially if you're an Asian American male in television. There aren't really roles for us in this country. And certainly, as I think Jonathan alluded to this too, no one's looking to hire a Korean American male to be their main news anchor, and no one's looking to hire an Indian American male to be their main news anchor. And so I really struggled to get footing in the business, and it took me a long time. And again, Jonathan and I have been close friends, and so many other folks in AAJ have been close friends and allies to just support one another, right? Which I think this network is incredibly important, especially those formative years, especially when you're going through struggles, when your careers go, your career prospects go up and down. I mean, let's face it, there is so much tumult in the world. So through that downturn, I learned, how to persevere through things. Had a lot of start and stopping in my career. Finally, I got a foothold working at different TV stations around the country. My career took me to Oregon. It took me to Tennessee. I worked on the Central Coast in California. I'm a Syracuse University alum, so I've been back east in New York. And then I got a chance to work in my hometown at the ABC and CBS stations out here, and I also worked in radio. And then, fast forward to a job that I took in Salinas, Monterey, a small market, and I was just struggling. I mean, I think I told the story. I was asked to speak at AAJ maybe 5 years ago, and I told the story. But I was 30 years old, and I was making $10.50 an hour as a reporter, and it was just harrowing to be a straight adult male making $10 an hour. Like, you can't go out on a date. You can't go out in public. It's embarrassing, right? To be at that age and still basically have to live at home with your parents. And what I ended up doing is I said, you know what, I gotta pick myself up, and I have enough knowledge of this industry. I've seen the way these guys run these TV stations, and I was fortunate that I had interned for a small TV station in San Francisco. And 2008, we saw the economy collapse. And there became an opportunity that I got aware of where this guy that I had interned for his station, he was in the hole, $15 million. And I told my parents, I said, this is an opportunity. This guy's struggling. He doesn't have a vision for the station, but we live in the Bay Area. It is one of the most diverse, most dynamic places on the planet, and we can turn this place around. And I also had to get buy-in from my little brother, which is hard to do. You don't generally want to go into business with your siblings, just in case you ever encounter that. It's challenging, but luckily for me, there was buy-in from my parents and my brother, and the four of us all went into buying a television station that was failing, completely failing. And I can't tell you how many people that I knew said this is a mistake, including close family members. The only people who really believed me were my parents. And we somehow turned this analog TV station that at the time was running Spanish Christian programming. And within 1 year, we created America's most diverse television station. And so this was January of 2009. So timing's important in life also. And we were in the midst of a second downturn in my short-lived journalism career. And here we are, number 3 is going on right now with the pandemic. But in January 2009, we were fortunate. We made that investment, and we used the best technology that was available to us. And we're fortunate being Silicon Valley. And so we launched 20 different channels of programming, 12 video, 8 audio. And the whole objective when we got started was to create programming for different communities that were marginalized and had been ignored. And so I'm of Indian descent. but there was no real programming for Indian Americans. And I saw this emerging Vietnamese community in San Jose, and I didn't know a whole lot about the Vietnamese community growing up here, but I saw, wow, this is a vibrant, dynamic, business-oriented community. I mean, you'd be amazed at what you see in Orange County and San Jose. And so I thought, okay, well, we could do Vietnamese, we could do Indian, what else could we do? And then I thought, okay, well, there's a huge Filipino community in the Bay Area, maybe we could try that. So with just those concepts, we thought we could do multiple streams of programming. And the real revolution at that time was we had one TV channel at a time in the analog days, but with digital, we could divide up the bandwidth and do multiple channels. So we thought, let's just experiment and try different things. So we tried a real estate channel. We tried all these different things, and some of it worked and some of it didn't. And the Vietnamese channel just took off. And from one channel, we went to 7 channels. And today in the Bay Area, there are 15 Vietnamese focused channels for the Bay Area audience. And I'm very proud to have brought that to the table. And then our Indian American channel started with one channel, and I was the sole employee. I mean, it was hard to run a television station, build what is now a television network, and then I was still working at the NBC station as a reporter. And so my time, you talk about being stretched, I was driving 90 minutes south to report for NBC. I was taking meetings Friday night at 10 p.m. To do business development for my TV station. And then I would try to program our Indian American TV channel and made a whole bunch of mistakes along the way. I mean, different contracts and a lot of things that I did just went wrong early on. But sure enough, we were able to shore up the business. And within a year and a half, we built a profitable business. And before we knew it, we caught a lot of attention. And in 2010, our television station was actually nominated as Television Station of the Year by Broadcast Engineering, which, to give you some perspective, the year before, ESPN won that award. So for us to be even in the same breath as ESPN was pretty amazing. As that business started to grow, I started to get other opportunities, and then I got an opportunity to buy a television station in Chicago. So I bought a television station in Chicago, and now we broadcast on Willis Tower, which the folks in Chicago will still say is the tallest office building in the world, with apologies to the folks in New York with the new World Trade. And from there, I was able to acquire a station in Fargo, North Dakota. And last year, we acquired a television station in Orlando. And all the while, our Indian American channel called Ye TV is now the largest South Asian TV channel in the United States. In fact, it is, to my knowledge, the largest Asian American owned and operated television channel in the United States. Most of the other Asian American programming is coming from overseas, and very little of it is generated domestically, with the exception of, let's say, some of the local Vietnamese programming that you may get in Los Angeles or Houston or San Francisco. So I'm very proud about we've been able to grow and expand and cover different communities. And so I think what has happened is my relationship with AAJA has changed, because I came into AAJA as a guy just on the outside looking in. I was a struggling journalist trying to make a living, and I'm sure I hope no one on this call is like that, but I know for myself, I mean, for years, I mean, I had to be a student member, couldn't afford the full rates. I mean, it was bad. So I can completely appreciate the struggles of every single member and the struggles we have in our career. And then I've been fortunate that we've been able to grow and expand, and just, this is our own funding. We don't have outside capital. We've been able to grow it. And the reality is, because you're a small business, I've been the controller, I've been the CFO, I've been the treasurer. You name the role in financial accounting, which, let's face it, a decade ago, I didn't know a whole lot about. I knew how to balance a checkbook a little bit, but a lot of the stuff I had learned on my own. And I was also fortunate that my parents were both entrepreneurs, and some of that had been infused in me. So, I mean, effectively, I've been working in business since I was 11 years old. So that definitely helps. And so all the while, I had to go into business to fund the journalism. And the best part about what I get to do now is I still get to be a journalist. I still get to go interview newsmakers. I still get to cover high-profile events all over the world now. It takes me everywhere. And it's just been a blast. And whether it's sports, whether it's news, politics, technology, business, in a sense, we've created a category for an entire genre of people. And it's not just Indian Americans, but it's all these different Asian American communities. We even have an African American channel in Chicago. We launched the very first Native American channel in North Dakota. which talk about marginalized communities. They have huge reservations in North Dakota. They have no voice, no say. But when you have a minority owner like myself, I see and I try to hear what the community's saying, and I'm very proud of launching that Native American channel. So, there's a long way to go for us to go in this business. But part of the reason I'm running for this finance position is I've seen the ebbs and flows of AAJA. I have seen the passion, the fire. You saw Jonathan early on. I mean, Jonathan's been like that for 20 years. There are all kinds of members in this organization that I am just thrilled to know, thrilled to learn from. We have some of the most dynamic people I've ever met in this organization. The intellectual horsepower in AAJA cannot be denied. And that's why I'm still here, even though it's tough. It's tough to give time, especially I was on the San Francisco chapter for almost a decade, and we had a great chapter for many years, but then you lose leadership, you lose presidents, people move on in their careers, their family life, and like Julia said in the previous session, the chapter dwindled below large chapter status, and that was stunning to me. But these things happen when you're not paying attention. I think when I see AAJA, I think of all the potential, all the possibilities. Obviously, the AAJA chapter is a whole.
All right,
other
time,
universe.
Ravi.
Oh, okay. Anyway, I can go on, but I appreciate you listening to me. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask.
Great. So let's move on to Jen. Can you tell me a little bit about you, your career, and why we should vote for you for VP of Finance?
Thank you for having me, Asia chapter. Even though I'm not a chapter member there, but because I'm from Asia, I totally feel like seeing your face is like seeing family. I started in China as a sport journalist, reporting on CBA, reporting on snooker, reporting on Olympics as a correspondent in London for Chinese newspapers. And then I worked as a nationwide marketing research analyst for NBC in New York. And I started my nonprofit journalism career, kind of took back from the reporting position nearly 80 years ago. I worked for Pulitzer Center for almost 6 years. And in the past year, I've been working with the International Women's Media Foundation. And I'm super proud of my work because I am actually first year introducing International Women's Media Foundation to AAJ's Asia chapter. We will be hosting digital security training at the N3Con. So I really look forward to see everyone on August the 30th for that session. And I co-founded a group called Chinese Storytellers, which is pretty well known in Asia reporting. We are a global community to elevate Chinese professionals in the media industry, mostly English. And I am very involved in AAJA as a affinity group leader. I co-founded AAJA's Women and Non-Binary group, and I am also this year's co-chair for this year's AAJA convention on the US side, which is going to happen in 10 days. This is really a crazy time for me. I was a journalist and I worked as a founder of international journalism and also as a fundraiser for nonprofit. I know AAJA from inside out as a convention chair and also as a affinity group leader. I would like to combine all this knowledge above I mentioned and the experience I had to serve AAJA as the next VP of Finance. And I just want to talk a little bit about my vision of the AAJA's finance future through 3 different points. So I want to talk about how we're going to grow AAJA's membership and how we're going to diversify our funding resources, as well as how we can build a long-term investment plan for AAJA. Let's start from growing membership. I think we need to be very clear on the worthiness of being part of AAJA. For Asia chapter is a little bit different. Why would you join Asian American Journalism Association's Asia chapter? While you're working as a journalist in Asia, you not necessarily are Asian American. Do you guys hear this noises? Maybe it's only me. Sorry. So I really want just to talk about how we can be clear on the membership value and what does it mean for you to sign up for AAJA as a member and also as a Asia chapter member. Like why you're signing up for a global organization, not only for what you can receive from the Asia chapter itself, like the N3Con, the training opportunities there. And then, after you sign up, like we currently don't have a system that's built in to take care of onboarding, take care of, first month experience, and also, allowing, auto renew, those steps that are currently not set in the system, that I would like to build that. I would like to strengthen our community building through, real-time financial reporting and tracking. Oh, I think Zella, that's your mic.
Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. Getting back to the point, which really the tackling down through the financial system, we have that to do real-time tracking and report to allow chapters and affinity group leaders to engage members in a personal level, that we need to provide them with the tools that they need to know where they're at with their memberships. And using that with a simple report, we could actually elevate empower our chapter and our affinity group leaders to provide more services to our members. And we need to treat our members as donors. Membership is a huge part of AAJA's general operating support, and the more we can grow in that pool, the better we will be able to grow our general operating support, allowing us the freedom to actually serve our members. So after we talk about the membership growth, I want to talk about how we can diversify this funding resource. AAJA currently, the majority of the funding resources are actually, convention based, which means every year we have to host this massive convention and trying to do most, on the fundraising and the sponsorship part through the convention. And I would like to continue building the fundraising ability of our annual convention and N3Con. And as just Michelle said, combine the both for some sponsorships internationally, that would be great. And we also need new ways to attract funding to support, AAJ's signature programs, such as Voices, JCamp. And those can be easily turned into, content creation models that I currently am at the International Women's Media Foundation. I manage over $1 million grant funding in nonprofits, with most of the funding coming from foundation support for content creation. And I am currently running programs, including training for newsrooms and journalism groups, I just mentioned, for like the ones that my organization is providing to N3Con. I wanted to bring that experience of communicating with funders and also communicating, with sponsors to, AAJ Sport as well. And I think with a growing and engaged membership base, we can, really just be at a better position for ourselves to attract corporate sponsors. The last point I want to mention is the building a long-term investment strategy for AAJA. I think that is hugely important because, I've worked at organizations such as the Pulitzer Center that established its first endowment fund, when I was working there. And we were able to, raise over 10 million from various funders and donors, matching funds. And after, 4 or 5 years, we established that fund. Starting from this year, the Pulitzer Center, even though I left them, they are able to receive $500,000 from investment every year into their general operating support. So at my current job, I also, manage funding that just like Kim Wall Memorial Fund and also, Anya Niederinghaus Courage in Photojournalism Award, both like a journalism grant and also for entrepreneurship projects and also awards through the endowment funding. And I want to mention, this year, our Hong Kong chapter, our Asia chapter Hong Kong member, Laura Choe, was actually selected by that award that I just mentioned. I was super happy about it and inviting her to speak at AAJ's national convention this year as well. So, if elected, one of the first thing I like to do is starting an endowment committee. And AAJA has, established endowment fund in the past with previous president Mei Chan and Esther Wu. But, it hasn't been a fundraising priority for many, many years, almost like the past decade. With a sizable endowment, we will be able to receive a very good 7% return annually to come back to AAJA for basically covering the entire signature programs I mentioned, ELP, JCamp, and Voices. So we will be able to free our capacity to support more year-long programming, to support more international programming, and just really help our membership to grow, and also helping our members to not only at entry level funding their internship, but also at their mid level to help them to do entrepreneur projects. So I think AAJA really at this moment needs leaders who can see the organization's future beyond the next 5-10 years. We need a long-term investment strategy. And with my experience in journalism, nonprofit as manager, and also knowing AAJA from inside out, want to help AAJA to grow as a community, as an organization. I just think I would be able to do this job on the board. I have a tracking record in AAJA to help members to find those funding resources, to close sponsorships for AAJA and AAJA, and I get things done really well. So I hope I would earn your support in this election for me to be the next VP of Finance of AAJA. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Jin. So, question. So in this year, many nonprofits are struggling financially. So what plans do you have to put AAJA in a better position financially? I think Jin kind of laid out what her thoughts were for that. So why don't we give this question to Ravi? And if people who are listening from home, can you just type in some questions if you have any in our chat group, and I will ask them. So Ravi, to you.
So AAJA has suffered from a number of things. I think number one is the lack of retention of our members. I have been in AAJA for 20 years now, and I can't tell you the countless hundreds of people that I've met. And in fact, the last 2 years, to be frank, I have not been engaging much on social media for many reasons, but namely because I've just been very busy, wrapped up in running our businesses. And I can't tell you how many people have spoken to me over the last just 1 week, and I haven't even gotten to most of the folks out there. So if anyone knows people that have not heard from me, it's not personal. I literally have not had a chance to get back to all the folks I've met. And I think one of the challenges we have is we have this dynamic group of people, and after a while they lose touch with the organization because the organization has lost sight of them. And let's face it, I think you get to a certain point in your career and the value out of AAJA isn't enough. It's not, look, I think we'll all be friends, and now because of social media, we can stay connected. But the truth is, to come out and spend money to physically come to the convention, and now with the pandemic, all of these things have to change. And I think one of the reasons I've decided to run for this position is that I have already pivoted our businesses to be virtual digital businesses. And I've been able to run our businesses basically from my home. And I look at AAJA as an experiential business primarily, where we have the local chapters that are highly dependent on getting revenue from local benefactors. And again, going back to my experience in San Francisco, we raised on average $20,000 to $25,000 annually from local chapters, local sponsors of our chapter through an experiential model. And I think Julia alluded to that in her conversation. And we did that in spades with East West Eats and other events that we did in San Francisco. All of that is going to change in 2020 and 2021. And frankly, I think into 2022, I think we have to have a 2 to 3 year forecast of looking at AAJA completely differently. And that's part of the reason I want to come on board to restructure the way we do things at the local level and at the national level. And I think part of what we need to do is, Jin works at a nonprofit, which I think is great. And we definitely need to coalesce our work with nonprofits. But my experience working with some of the biggest media companies in the world will help us get the dollars that we rightfully deserve. As Asian Americans, we are the most affluent demographic in the United States, but we're not treated like it. We have so many dynamic people in the organization, but nobody demands it. And the reality is, in America, certainly, you don't get anything unless you ask for it. Frankly, in America, they just take it. I don't think we have to take it, but I do think we have to ask for it and be assertive about it. And this is why, when it comes to dealing with large broadcasters, nonprofits, different groups alike, I have C-suite level experience. I work with the biggest broadcasters in the United States that power hundreds of television stations. and they are clients of mine across my television stations in Chicago, in San Francisco, in Orlando, and across North Dakota, not to mention clients of mine that work, that power and advertise on our television network. So the relationship base I'm talking about is advertising agencies, it's Fortune 500 companies, it's Silicon Valley companies. Where I live and work in Silicon Valley, and a great number of my friends here power Silicon Valley. Asian Americans, frankly, power Silicon Valley. So I think we're looking at a different base, and I want to approach AAJA differently. With respect to all the folks that have come before, I don't want AAJA to be a $1 to $1.5 million organization as it has been. AAJA needs to set its sights higher, and I think it's about vision. It's about setting our goals much higher. I have talked to previous national board members. I've talked to previous executive directors. I know for a fact that there was an endowment initiative before.
That's enough, Ravi.
And all that did not come to fruition, and we need to fix that.
It's time. You've had 4 minutes. So, Jin, I wanted to give you an opportunity to respond to that. What plans do you have to put AAJA in a better position financially?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Zella. I think I just want to elaborate on what I said about to diversify our funding resources. AAJA currently is heavily dependent on the convention. And as you guys already heard from Michelle, that this year actually we are like hugely exceeding our goal in terms of attracting sponsorship and corporate donors. But at the same time, you see this year's convention, because we are shifting online, we are generating much less money through the convention ticket. At the same time, because the convention ticket doesn't have a tier system for members and non-members, so we are seeing our membership renewing rate dropping significantly through this time. And I think going back, I think very importantly, we need to work on the membership part, because if you don't grow your membership, you don't let donors and sponsors see how vibrant, how connected, how engaged your members are, they have questions of why they should sponsor you. We need to go back to that. At the same time, building on what we already have, right? We already have a very good established relationship with some foundations and with some sponsors. How do we, talk with them? And also, honestly, nonprofit journalism is a very small world. People who are donating to nonprofit journalism are very connected with each other. We need to really market ourselves better in terms of how we talk about development, how we talk about AAJA as an organization having its value, and with various of our programs that we are currently marketing. For example, Voices program as a college program that help AAPI college students to getting into the job market, to prepare them, to allowing them to create content and working with mentors. But what we can do to do a little spin on that is focusing on what are the content they are creating. They are reaching to markets that are traditionally mainstream media are not reaching. And those are all selling points to funders and sponsors that we need to evaluate our program, at the same time just using that to do a different spin on it. And it will be really appealing to a lot of funders, a lot of sponsors out there. And I have the experience doing exactly the same with the programs that I'm managing at my current job.
Okay, thank you, Jin. So for our viewers at home, feel free to drop in any questions you might have on the chat.
Can I follow up on what Jin just said?
I'm actually going to ask the next question, which kind of builds on that.
Sure.
So the next question is, how should AAJA expand its outreach and development efforts to increase funders, sponsors, and advertisers? Would you like to go first, Ravi?
Sure, happy to. Well, I think this is a fundamental difference in our platforms. I think, I've been in the business for 20 years, and so the relationships I have are very deep with the biggest media companies in the United States. And most of them have global presences as well. And so it's a different conversation. Again, with respect, when you're in business, there's a certain approach that needs to be taken. And I don't want us to come across as a weak organization. We have normally come hat in hand, it seems. And we're a powerhouse. We have dynamic people in this organization. And we need to be at the same table. Now, for the AAJA chapter, if you're aware of some of the dynamics in the United States, there are other groups. There's the National Association of Black Journalists. There's the National Association of Hispanic Journalists. There's ONA, which is a relatively new group, the Online News Association. They all get much more support, especially from major sponsors than we do, and that should not happen given our demographic. And we've allowed that to happen really under our nose because the reality is we have not taken tactical steps to reach out to the Fortune 500 companies at their level. And I think that's very important for the senior journalists. And just to give you some context, we have senior journalists at every level. I had a conversation today with Juju Chang, who's the anchor at Nightline at ABC News, and she's endorsed my campaign. And what Juju is concerned, as I am, is that we need to make sure to retain our members. We need to have programs for them. When you've been in the business for 20 years, like I have, the truth is I went to ELP 2 years ago, and it really was just hanging out with my friends. I didn't really get a whole lot out of ELP because I had already accomplished a lot of these things that ELP sets you out to do. And so what we need to do is actually take a deeper look at our programming and engage people. Because I got a message today from a friend of mine that's been in the business 20 years who says, I think I'm about to leave journalism and I can't support AAJA because I think I'm done with journalism. Do you know how many people I've interfaced with that have said that to me? This is part of the reason we have a lack of retention. This is part of the reason now we also have had systemic issues in dealing with the other organizations. And I also want to get to another point. When I started this organization, AAJA was aligned with the Black and the Hispanic journalists as well as the Native American journalists. And we had this amazing conference called Unity. Now, Unity had its faults, and it maybe wasn't the best from a business standpoint financially for AAJA, but the power of 10,000 journalists of color cannot be denied. And we had presidential candidates show up for our events every 4 years. There is nothing like the energy of having all of these dynamic journalists from different backgrounds challenging the establishment and moreover, helping their own careers. And the kind of mentorship that I got, for example, a guy like Byron Pitts, who's now the co-anchor at Nightline, he critiqued my tape back in 2004, and he challenged my every approach to journalism. And I didn't get that same kind of aggressive feedback from my AAJA members because they have a different approach, but Byron challenged me. And I think it's important to have the AAJA family. But the fact that we had unity and that resource of having top Black journalists, top Hispanic journalists, top Native Americans to talk to was incredible.
Great. Okay, thank you. So Jen, I wanted to give you time also to answer the question, how should AAJA expand its outreach and development efforts to increase funders, sponsors, and advertisers?
Thank you, Zella. I think AAJA needs to position itself as the largest Asian American Journalism Association in the country, that even though our name is that, but people don't think about us when they think about AAPI representation. I think this year is the moment exactly why I was bringing up the long-term investment plan that AAJA needs to start, because we need to tell folks that because of us, because of AAJA, that AAPI representation can move forward. And we need to messaging that across the platform in all of our development plans. And going back to the community, we're not only targeting at the traditional funders and traditional media sponsors. As we all know that in many big name media organizations currently are, really suffering because of the pandemic, and with, the things are going on here in the US side is completely different with how Asia is opening up now. We just are facing a much bigger issue and long-term issue in the next few years. So diversify our funding means going back to the community, really talking with people, engaging with people, to letting them understand why they need to invest in AAJA, despite they are part of the journalism community or not. We have a lot of Asian American journalists are not part of AAJA. We need to look at who left us, and with that data, as I said earlier, that provide that data to our chapters, our affinity groups leaders, to letting them to know what are the ways that we can improve our communication with them. That will be huge. And then going back, really relying on people that having those connections, the reason I want to do a committee for the endowment fund is because I want to rely on a lot of high-profile AAJA journalists and people who have connections in the business and AAPI community to help us to build the investment plan. So that is, when I'm talking about it, I'm not looking at one single pot of the money. I'm looking at overall year-long programs where we can start and how do we market ourselves to everybody who support AAJ's mission and not only Asian American journalists.
Thank you both, Jen and Ravi. We will bring all the other candidates back and open it up to questions from our audience. So we have Michelle Lee, who is running for national president. Julia Chan and Jonathan Choe are running for the vice president of civic engagement. And we have Ravi Kapur and Jin Ding running for the vice president of finance. And actually, we already have an audience question, which are going to our finance candidates. This comes from Juan. She is the Asia president. We've been successful in fundraising here in Asia. Wondering what ideas you have to extend fundraising to Asia. And I think this probably comes from a point that a lot of the fundraising that happens in national is just for the US, right? And Asia fundraising tends to be just Asia fundraising. So who wants to start first, Ravi or Jen?
I'm happy to jump in. I think an important source of funding that AAJA, maybe not for a lack of trying, but just hasn't been able to tap into is Silicon Valley digital-based companies. We see the power of Google, you see the power of Facebook, you see the power of a number of these startups, and they're right here in Silicon Valley, and we have not gotten our fair share. They really do fund O&A significantly. We should be tapping into these companies. And beyond that, there's also other sources of funding that are out there. There are small media venture funds that are out there that are looking for the next big idea. I know when Yvonne, the former AAJA president, was about to kick off Catalyst, she met with me privately in San Francisco and asked for ideas and how to get Catalyst kicked off. And I thought Catalyst conceptually has a good concept, but I think we need to do much more. Again, part of the job here is to secure AAJA's future. And I think part of the issue we've had is there's a lot of people that use AAJA to pad their resume, and there's not enough people thinking about the next 20 years, the next 40 years. And I'm at a stage of my career, and I think this is true of other candidates, that when you're at a stage where you're fully developed as a journalist, you want to give back. And we've got to think about how AAJA can have a self-sustainable funding source. And so while the endowment initiative never really got off the ground 10 years ago, that's something that I've proposed from the outset. And I think part of what we can do is even leverage a program like Catalyst and have someone come into the Catalyst program, give them funding, and potentially have a piece of that equity pulled off. Let's say 1% of your startup for $25,000 or $50,000, much like
okay, time, Ravi. That was 2 minutes.
We can do that in Asia as well. Sure.
Thank you. So Jen, 2 minutes for you. How can we increase fundraising in Asia? I think we fundraise in national, we just think about US, and Asia thinks about Asia. So
yeah,
how can they work together?
I definitely see a different sponsorship pool for N3Con and our own convention. I didn't notice Google is a sponsor for you guys at N3Con, like Ravi just mentioned about tech giants. I think there is, significant funding available that from the US side that are interested in Asia that we're currently not tapping into. There are foundation supports that specifically are for Asia programs in other nonprofits. But currently, I think we have this lack of a bridge between AAJ's Asia chapter and the AAJA national chapter in terms of that part of fundraising. And I would like to explore that with Asia because currently at my job, I also have a program that is running dual team support between Asia and US called Runners Media. So I really think we need to build on the collaboration part between Asia chapter members and the US members, and specifically using that as a vehicle to drive more funders. And we just got to admit a majority of the media funders are coming from US and Europe. And for them getting into Asia, they really need to spend a lot of groundwork. And the AAJA chapter in Asia is already there, already have an infrastructure, already have a conference that is vibrant and have a very strong base. So I would like to having us, really tap into that as well.
Okay, thank you, Jen. This next question will be for Michelle. It comes from Tom Benner. He is a very active member in Singapore, and he's actually designing our N3Con magazine. So thank you, Tom. So for Michelle, he asks, with an increased AAJA presence in Washington, D.C., and the hiring of an executive director based in D.C., do you see the organization taking more of an advocacy role and a voice in public policy discussions? You have 1 minute.
Oh, okay. Well, thanks for that question. AAJA actually is bi-coastal. We maintain our SF headquarters. We have staffers in DC now, including our ED and myself. We just hired a national staffer in Wisconsin. So we're bi-coastal now. We will remain a journalism organization. We will always be civically engaged. When you mean advocacy, I hope you don't mean that we're going to be going into like any sort of ways that really jeopardizes our journalistic integrity. However, being in DC has allowed us to be a part of certain discussions that we have not been before. Just 2 quick examples. One is that when Representative Judy Chu issued a letter among the congressional members asking for major media broadcast companies why their diversity numbers are lacking, their connection with our executive director, Naomi, she was alerted to that, and we were able to issue a joint, not a joint letter, but a parallel letter to kind of ask the same questions of media companies. Another is that we were able to join a federal case where the media company, the broadcast representatives were asking for it to become illegal for broadcast companies to hire, to discriminate upon hiring based on race. And we didn't even have insight into that case except for the connections that we had in DC. So thanks to being in DC, being in the media space, the connections that we were able to make, we were able to join that lawsuit and push for that limit to be lifted. So there are great benefits here, and I'm happy to talk more. So I just feel a little rushed, but I'm happy to talk more about how our existence here has actually helped us engage in that front.
All right, thank you, Michelle. We have one more question for our civic engagement candidates, and this comes from Cheryl, who is the student rep for AAJA Asia. She's based in Singapore. And she asks, what are your concrete plans to connect directly with our Asia student members and increase their participation?
Hell yes. AAJA students. This is the first time. Okay, I'm gonna talk fast then. This is the first time, by the way, that AAJA students can vote. So if you're here, thank you for being here. Exercise your vote, make it count. And what I would want to do is I would want to make sure we are exploring how existing programs have been connecting with students. So we have JCamp, we have Voices, and I've been in really close contact and conversation with the directors of both the programs, and they are so excited about my ideas around how we can build a culture of deeper listening at AAJA. These students are so hungry for engagement. At a recent virtual JCamp event, the responses, the feedback, everything these kids had to instill, and they're not kids, students had to instill upon anyone listening was so valuable that it is our job as AAJA and as leadership to collect these responses, use them in a constructive and a productive way, and actually inform future programming. And so I would like to know what we have been doing currently to connect and engage with Asia students, and what ways could we continue to evolve this connection in a way that makes sense. And, we're living in a virtual world right now. So that is my 1 minute. Thank you very much.
So Jonathan, your opportunity to answer, how can Asia student members more directly connect with you all?
Well, first of all, we're journalists, so I just want to add Bobby Calvan's correction. Not the first time students could vote. National leaders have forgotten that students were given the vote in 2013, and I want to build off of that. I think we've really not emphasized the importance of students as being the future of AAJA. We were all students at one point, and I think I have the unique vantage point of not only having grown up in Boston, but someone who's worked in Boston. I would say that is the global crosswords of academia and some of the most elite universities in America. And on top of that, of course, we have a lot of students from Asia who come to study. So anyway, my point is, this is pretty much my bread and butter. I've had the privilege and opportunity to have access to some of the best journalism candidates. And the common thread is that many of them did not know about AAJA. But once they found out about what this organization was about, how we could all come together, serve each other, and help really push each other's careers forward, walk with them. My goodness, with students, it's all in. And I really believe that needs to happen in Asia. And thank you so much for wanting that. I will be your advocate as VP of Civic Engagement, and I promise you, your voice will be heard at the national level. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Okay, I think that wraps it up here. I've kept you guys a little bit longer, but I will give an opportunity for closing statements. So you all have 1 minute, and I'm actually going to time you on my phone. So why don't we start with the president first, Michelle?
Thank you again for this opportunity, and I loved listening to the exchange of ideas here, and I hope that you were able to get to know me a little bit better. Over the next 2 years, I will make a concerted effort to make sure that we push our effort to expand globally and build relations in a stronger way between Asia and national, and I'm very much looking forward to working closely with the AAJA chapter and working toward a very successful 2020 convention that we will have globally. And it will be our first time taking on an effort like that. And I very much look forward to talking more. If you have any more questions, please let me know. I'm on AAJA Slack. It's pretty easy to find me. So please reach out to me anytime.
Great, thank you. So next we'll do the VPs of Civic Engagement in reverse alphabetical order. So Julia, 1 minute.
Thanks, Zella. So I'm going to finish a thought I had when I was answering a question earlier about working with AAJA chapter. First and foremost, I think your chapter, the work you all have done needs to be commended. And I think what we need to do as national is take a harder look at the example and the models that you all have shaped already. DN3, Digital N3 Con. That was a revelation. You all essentially galvanized to throw a global conference that was both digital and was able to really engage folks from Asia and US. I think we need to take a hard look at that model now and see how that can help inform our future amid a pandemic and as we're looking towards 2021 and 2022, especially in light of what I think Michelle Lee's breaking news around the collaboration that's coming in 2022. So if you would like to talk more, yes, we can.
Oh, time. All right. So next we have closing statements from Jonathan. Actually,
I want to give Julia 10 seconds to give her plug to all her platforms, because I'm not going to take as long. Go ahead, Julia. Seriously, go ahead. I want to give this to Julia. Go ahead.
All right. Thanks, Jonathan. Please feel free to email me, yeswechanaaja@gmail.com. A lot of you have already hit me up on LinkedIn and Facebook throughout the last 2 hours. Thank you. I'm glad we're connecting. And let's keep talking. Thanks so much, Julia, for VP of Civic Engagement.
All right. I'll start with my platform as well. I'm at Vote Choe, at Vote Choe on Twitter, and I got a crazy promo video I want y'all to look at as well. But with that said, my closing thought is simply, at the end of the day, I have never been a part of a more dynamic campaign and election in my nearly 20 years of being a part of AAJA. Everybody wins, no matter the outcome, because I've seen so many people on both sides among the bundlers and the base and the supporters of all the candidates come together and coalesce, and our organization is so much stronger because of that. And guys, let me double down and say Asia needs to be a part of this conversation moving forward in 2020. We have so much to learn from you. Teach us, the dumb Americans, okay, what to do, how we can be better. And I want to encourage all of you to, again, be a part of this conversation in shaping the future of our organization. Thank you so much for having us. Peace.
Thank you. All right, so closing statements from our VPs of Finance and in reverse alphabetical order. So I will start with Ravi.
Again, thank you so much for putting this forum together. I have a lot of plans for AAJA at the local level, at the national level. We're going to look at every line item in this organization and figure out where the fat is. It doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of fat, and I'm glad Michelle alluded to that the financial future of AAJA is not in peril. But I think we need to grow. We need to look bigger, get more corporate support, get more nonprofit funding. Jonathan alluded to having a fund for journalists in distress, that we should absolutely look into that. Get back on the track for the endowment, which I think is an important vehicle for our financial future. We should be able to fund most of our programming through the endowment. And beyond that, we need to look at other vehicles like entrepreneurship as mechanisms to fund AAJA. There's a lot of talented people. Frankly, every time I come to AAJA, I look at someone like Michelle Lee and think, man, Michelle could run a company, right? And I look at all these other folks who are journalists. We're content creators effectively, and whether you work for a major company or a small one, we should use our skills to benefit ourselves, benefit our families, and of course benefit AAJA.
Okay, Jin, to you, last word.
Yay. So Asia chapter, when you're voting for me, you're voting someone who have extensive Asia reporting experience, who knows Asia from inside out. I believe the next generation of global reporting coming out from Asia, and I really want to support you. And I have a tracking record in AAJA to connect resources to AAJA, to connect sponsorships to AAJA. And I work hard. I am working on the convention right now that are going to happen in 10 days. I hope to see you there. At the same time, I'll definitely see you at N3Con on August 30th at the digital security training.
Great. Thank you, guys. Okay, I'm so thrilled to have you all here. Thank you for our speakers. It's quite late in the US right now, midnight for Michelle and those of you on the East Coast. So thank you for staying up late to have this first ever chat with the Asia chapter on the elections. I really appreciate that. And thank you for all the viewers for dialing in from Asia and across the world, in the US and various parts. Just a reminder, you should have received the ballot already in your inboxes and your emails. The deadline to vote is August the 12th at 8 p.m. Eastern time. So for Asia, that's August 13th at 8 a.m. Hong Kong time. And just some final reminders, this has been recorded, so you can go back and check if you didn't wake up early enough for this. We will also have AAJA Fest, which is an all virtual conference on August 9th through the 15th, and that is a discounted $90 US fee for 5 days of programming with one-on-one sessions with recruiters and networking and socials, and of course the panel discussions. And also, if you can't take that time off from work, we also have N3Con coming at the end of the month. That's all virtual, August 28th through 30th, and it's super, super cheap at $10 US. So everybody from the US and other parts of our global audience here, please sign up, and we'll see you guys again. So thank you. Thank you all. Have a good night. Bye. Have a good day in Asia. Enjoy your weekend.
Friday night, party
Thank
time.
you.
All good.
The West Coast is going to party now. Michelle, you go to bed. West Coast is going to the club. Bye.
I'm going to bed.
Bye, guys.
See you guys.
Thanks. Good